yake aliniacha hapa kitambo, sasa ndio ananiambia aliniacha.
% provision, particularly when it comes to things like transport and funding some of those special needs. It feels as if this is a slight missed opportunity, and I do wonder whether this has been done, because a lot of your colleagues have been quite concerned about the impact, so they're doing this in a go-slow way to not have some kind of backlash.
Well, I think what's interesting is when you talk to people, schools would like it to happen probably faster, and the parents want it to happen slower. So making sure that we've got that phased approach particularly means that we build the system which will support children better in mainstream education before we start saying to anybody that things might need to change for those children themselves. So no one is going to have to change anything until they get to a new stage. So even if they're in start school in 2029, they're not going to have to deal with this until much later if they get an EHCP.
But
I think that's reasonable.
as someone says on a text here, why is it only coming in when Reform will be in government?
Well, you know what? Obviously, I will spend every single day of my living, breathing life to stop that from happening. Mostly, actually, because I know that it really matters to the families in my community who want to make sure that they are confident their kids can go to school locally with their friends, get the support they need in the classroom. And I tell you what, we've got Reform running Kent County Council, who are responsible for special educational needs. County councils are, and one of the first things they suggested was they would just get rid of all the send transport, which freaks out families who have spent all of their time getting their kid into a school on maybe on the other side of the county. That's not ideal, but simply to say you're going to cut the transport shows how little they understand about how special educational needs provision works and how important it is that we have that phased approach that I suggested, sir.
Just before I come to Steve, if you have a class of 30 children and, say, 2 of them have some form of special educational needs, in a sense it doesn't matter what it is, but say one of them is a bit disruptive, or can be, the parents of the other 28 are naturally going to think, well, is this actually really good? I can see why you want to integrate special needs pupils into mainstream classes. But if that's going to damage my child's education, I'm not going to be in favour.
Well, I know that Steve is a much better expert on all of this than I am in terms of actually how you deal with that, but I do know that when we had teaching assistants in classes and you had supportive wraparound support for those children, the disruption reduces quite considerably. Not completely for everybody, but assuming that simply because a child has special needs that they're going to be disruptive kind of has that it has some assumptions underneath it that really need to be challenged if we're going to be able to support those kids and the other 29 in the class who actually need to know and understand that people learn differently, that they absorb information differently, and that they can get on and thrive as long as they're given the right support.
That's it from Steve.
Well, first of all, there's several points here. The first thing is that providing special needs education in a mainstream school is an essential part of being of caring for children. Once a child is off-road and sent to a special school, they are stigmatised by that. They wear a label of I'm the kid that doesn't fit. So moving special educational needs education back into mainstream is a really great move. In Oasis, which is the charity I founded and work for, besides running schools, we do a lot of this work anyway. We work with schools. We never off-road kids, but we go into schools that Oasis doesn't run just to sit with these children who learn in a different way, in a different style. Their brains are different. Every human's brain is different, like every human fingerprint. So that's the first thing. The second thing, though, is to your point. You got 29 kids in a class, and their education's being disrupted by 1 or 2 children who are struggling and don't fit. The whole point of this is to give those 2 children the tailored education they need. Is not to leave them in the class where they can't cope, either because they're ahead of where the class is, or their learning style means they can't keep up with where the class is, but you can give them that individualised, bespoke, tailored education.
Well, if you've got the resources, but I
And
mean, if you have teaching assistants in every class, I mean, that's a hell of a lot more.
More into secondary education for special educational needs as a result of this announcement today. That's a significant investment, and I don't think we should underestimate how important that is to be able to change the prospects of children in schools.
Yeah, and the thing I'd say about it, two things again. First of all, who was it who famously said every story has a beginning, a muddle and an end? And this story's got a beginning, and there will be a muddle as we sort out this brand new system, which is why I think it's wise to take a long time over it instead of trying to do everything on day one. You've got to work your way through it, and that's what we find in Oasis. We find that in Oasis all of the time. And your point at the beginning, or perhaps the caller's point, was to say, isn't this a huge cost-cutting exercise? Well, actually, it's a huge, in my view, and I'm speaking as an educationalist, not as a politician, it's a huge educational enterprise, and if you get good education at the beginning for every child, then a lot of parents won't need to go for expensive EHCPs, and they won't need to fight, and you bring down the cost because you create great education from the beginning.
Just on that point, Archie in Inverness has texted this. Many have claimed that all education, health and care plans, or EHCPs, awarded are kosher. That is to say, no one can be gaming the system as the process involved is so adversarial and rigorous. Why then is there no such confidence where claimants of the personal independence payments are concerned, given the same arguments apply?
Well, I think the issue with this is that you've got to find a way of making sure people who really need the help get it the most, while also tackling this issue that I think there's a widespread view amongst many teachers that there has been a kind of overprescription of some kind of things within school, and that does add a burden and removes help from those who need it the most, as you were talking about, Steve. And I think ultimately the question I have again to this transition point is, I get the point you make, Polly, about making it phased, but in between now and the next 9 years, that's a long time when a lot of people are going to be dragged into SEND provision who may not need the help, who could be in mainstream education. And I think there will be more of a case having a rigorous question now about diagnosis of this to make sure that the resources are going to where they need to be.
I think families are doing absolutely all they can within the existing system, which is why the number of EHCPs has doubled over the last 10 years. And that shows that the system isn't working. Now, in those circumstances, the last thing I would want to do is try to take an EHCP out of the hands of a family who have fought tooth and nail to hold on to it, because that is the only thing they've got to protect their children, to make sure they get the support they need. So building something which means that they can be confident that the system will support their children without that over time, and as the children come through the system, is a much better way of doing it than saying, no, you're wrong, you've overprescribed. In fact, one of the things that George has specifically spoke about
people are wrong, to be fair.
Taking the bureaucracy out of the assessment and making sure that it's specialists who really are assessing people's needs.
But how do you get to the point where it's not just the parents with the sharpest elbows that will be able to fight the way through the system?
So here's the thing, all right, we have 33,000 children in our schools. I don't know parents who are trying to game the system. I do believe that parents who've got the wherewithal, they fight for their child just as you would, just as I would.
But there are many parents who don't know how to use the system.
Exactly, and that's what's wrong with the system.
And that's why the system needs to change.
Because the wealthy, the well-off, two parents with two incomes who've got time and emotional energy to spend and can pursue this, they get what they need in the end. But other parents get left out.
Also, another thing that's just to back you up on that, one of the things that's happening is they're going to change the thing where you need to have a condition diagnosed in order to be able to get special support. Instead, it's going to be, look, we can see your needs are different, you learn in a different way. We'll have speech and language therapy therapists available, for example. The schools like the ones that Steve runs will do outreach to mainstream schools to support those kids in mainstream classes. It's a much better, more child-centered.
So you're going to have teachers diagnosing rather than professionals?
No, absolutely not. It will be specialists. At the moment, it's far too bureaucratic. It will be specialists.
I have just come from a facility we run in South London. It's not a school. We run a centre that supports all the local schools. And today I witnessed Key Stage 2 children in small groups. We provide small groups. Sometimes we work in a child's school with them. Sometimes they come to us. And today I just witnessed a bunch of happy parents who are not going to pursue EHCPs. Why not? Because their children's low-level, rather than complex needs are being met through bespoke love, care, being seen and heard, and education in a style that works for them. We've got to keep EHCPs for the most complex children.
That was the point.
That's what's going to happen, isn't it? So there was this big announcement today. I'm in the middle of the day, my phone goes off, and it says... And again, I'm speaking as an educationist, not a politician. It said Labour intend to cut EHCPs in the end from all but the most complex children. Of course, because when you're caring for children and they're thriving in school, then their parents don't need to pursue these EHCPs, which is expensive and hard for them. But the children with complex needs, there'd be more money left to go for their needs.
Let's wrap this up with a text from Nick, who says, I'm a chair of governors for a special needs school. Just watch the number of exclusions increase exponentially in these schools as insufficient knowledge, skills and experience try to manage pupils with special educational needs. This is not inclusion, it's a route to exclusion.
It would be if you don't train teachers.
And that's part of the commitment.
Of course, you need therapeutically trained staff, and that's what we had in the past, isn't it? We had not just teaching assistants, but there were special needs, specially trained teachers.
Well, Nick,
exclusions have risen hugely over the last few years for the sheer lack of teachers who are trained to be able to cope with a child's needs.
Well, Nick, I'd love to hear more from you after 9 o'clock, because our 9 o'clock phone-in is going to be on whether you have confidence that these plans will improve things. And I really want your experience. If you have a child with special needs, do you think the system has failed you, your child, and what would you like to see changed? 0345 6060 973 if you have questions on any other subjects for our panel in this hour. It's 90 minutes past 8.
This is LBC.
I'm Leah, and this is my NHS story. I could just feel my body didn't feel right, and my GP referred me to CDC. Had some blood tests done, and within 24 hours I had my results. And that just reassured me that I was being taken seriously.
The government is opening new community diagnostic centres, with many already available 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, so the NHS can be there for all of us when we need it. Find your closest one at gov.uk/NHS Fit for the Future. Available England-wide.
You want £1 million?
I'd love £1 million.
So you enter the birthday draw and you think of a way to spend £1 million.
I'd pay off my mortgage and my mum's mortgage.
It's your lucky day and you win the birthday draw. But you forget to pay off those mortgages.
Whoops.
Because you're on a cruise with lots of money.
On a cruise, baby!
Is it your lucky day? For your chance to win £1 million, just search the birthday draw and enter now. From Global and ITV. 18 plus UK only. No purchase necessary.
With over 50 years' experience, at Fidelity, we believe there's a difference between investing and being invested. Investing is having access to guidance, tools and expert insights. Being invested means feeling confident about your future. Investing is choosing from a wealth of investment options. Being invested means focusing on your long-term goals. For ISAs, pensions or advice, be truly invested with Fidelity. Go to fidelity.co.uk. Your capital is at risk. Terms apply.
Leading Britain's conversation. Cross question with Ian Dale. Alexa, send a comment to LBC.
21 minutes past 8 on LBC. On our panel tonight, Polly Billington, Labour MP for East Thanet, Sebastian Payne, leader, writer and columnist for The Times, and the Reverend Steve Chalk, founder of Oasis Community Learning. Mims Davis is still not here. We're going to be his device soon. Anyway, hopefully she'll be here soon. There are lots of votes, I know, in the Commons tonight. Right, next question from Kai. Today, Reform UK announced their plans to retrospectively abolish indefinite leave to remain status. This means that people like my mum, who's lived here for over 20 years, working in our social care sector, paying her taxes and following the law, could lose the right to live in this country. How on earth can that be justified, and doesn't it fly in the face of Reform's rhetoric on integration to deport long-standing and vital members of our community. Now, Anne Widdecombe, Reform's previous immigration spokesman, did say to me in the previous hour this would not apply to people who have had ILR status for many years and have been working throughout that time. Well, I hope she's right, but that's not quite what I understand that policy to be. Steve Chalk.
I read earlier that Reform say that their new policy is capable of deporting 288,000 people every year, year on year on year on year on year. And this policy was just one of three they announced today, the second being to ban burger, and the third, I'm a Christian minister, to ban turning an empty church building into a mosque. I spent half of last week in Berlin, and you can't go more than a few yards in Berlin without being reminded of the Third Reich, the Nazi Party. And it struck me as I was walking through one of the museums where I learned all the statistics again about the mass deportations, etc., 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 that you could actually say that Hitler's slogan was make America great again. But it was the essence of that. That's what he wanted to do.
I have to say, I always think when somebody resorts to bringing Hitler and the Nazis into an argument, they haven't got there.
Yeah, well, I think Nigel Farage has said, make Britain great again.
So
the point...
He's emulating Donald Trump, not Adolf Hitler.
No, what I'm saying is, what you do is why pick on Muslim people? Because today, you read the news, I'm sure you do better more than I do, it's we need to make this country Christian again. It needs to return to being Christian. Well, actually, I am a Christian who studied theology, and Jesus wasn't a Christian. Very interesting thing. He was a Jew. And Jesus welcomed people of all religions and races. In fact, it upset the religious leaders. Those were the only people Jesus was ever angry with, the excluders. He was born a Jew, he died a Jew, he remained a Jew. But he
was the first Christian, wasn't he? I mean,
no, he wasn't.
By definition, he wasn't.
No, he wasn't. No. You see, when you say that, everybody who's done theology will be laughing because they...
Very probably.
No. He was a Jew. The term Christian was applied to his followers, the followers of Jesus, after his death, and it was a nickname. Jesus didn't care about people based on their religion or their colour. Jesus welcomed everyone. So therefore, to be a Christian nation is to be an inclusive nation. That's my point. And we become great again. We become great by being inclusive. Besides anything else, if we deport all these people, who's going to run our transport systems and our hospitals, etc., etc., etc.? In my view, is entirely mad.
Holly?
Well, I just think it's unfeasible and wrong to suggest that you would create that level of insecurity for people who have contributed to our country for years. Now, what you said was that Anne Widdecombe had told you that it wouldn't apply if they've been there for many years. Well, how long? And as long as they've been working all that time, well, does that mean that any break in their work would mean that they would be sent somewhere else? These are our friends and neighbours, and indeed our family members. These are people who contribute to society, and the idea that you would eradicate the indefinite leave to remain and end up with those kind of ludicrous numbers being deported is economically illiterate and morally wrong.
So, just to go back to Steve's point here, I really think, Steve, it's not helpful for these kind of debates to go to Nazi comparisons about this. I mean, I think people do have justified concerns about migration in this country, and you belittle those concerns when you try and draw those comparisons. You know, I just think it's really not helpful at all on that. On this point, Ian, I think this Anne Widdecombe point, I think, is crucial to it, because the fact is, the reason Reform are doing this policy is the so-called Boris wave, which is the wave of people who came when Boris Johnson loosened visa restrictions that led to about 2 million people coming to this country in the series of a couple of years. And what Reform want to do is essentially unwind that Boris wave and encourage those people, or make those people, to return to where they came from. That is very different from people who've been here for 5, 10, 20 years, because the Conservatives actually have.
Well, if Reform win the next election, a lot of those people would have been here for 5 years.
Yes, and I think the government's actually aware of that, which is why they're extending the indefinite leave to remain basis from 5 to 10 years, that you have to be here to get ILR because of that particular concern. The thing that I think you've got to get the balance on this is you've got to accept that people do have concerns about illegal migration. Zia Yusuf was talking about stopping the boats again, which every party now says they want to do, and no one particularly has had much success in doing it so far. But I think when you're talking about deporting tens or hundreds of thousands of people, I just don't believe there is a kind of mainstream appetite for that in this country at all.
I agree.
Rupert Lowe, who was obviously a former Reform MP, who's now gone to Restore Britain, who's his new party, he openly boasts of millions will be deported. That language, I think, goes well beyond what any normal concerns people have about this. But I think Reform have to clarify. If you're saying end of ILR full stop, I think that's quite extreme and would not garner support. If you're talking about illegal migrants, people who've come here illegally, or people who came on a temporary basis, that's a different thing. I think you can have a justified debate.
And my point wasn't necessarily about Germany or about America. It's about racism. It's about racism.
How can you accuse Zia Yusuf of that when he's a Muslim?
How can he plan deporting 288,000 people a year if he is a Muslim and he knows himself and he knows the opportunity that this country has given him? And this country is thrived because of our inclusiveness, which is based in Christianity. Christianity is the way of inclusion.
Do you think that this is going to resonate with the electorate? Because I suspect this is an issue where if you say to people, should we control immigration? Most people will say yes. Very few people in this country believe in open borders. If you say, should we deport lots of people? They'll say yes, if they're here illegally, yes, of course you should deport them. If you say, should we deport people who are here legally, I think people start to twitch.
Yeah.
But I think
let me finish the point. And I think that if you talk about people in an anonymous group of sort of immigrants, asylum seekers, whatever, people have one attitude. But if you say, but would you deport your neighbour, Mohammed, down the road? Oh, no, he's a great guy. No, I wouldn't want to deport him.
But what they're doing is they're delegitimising people who've been here all the time by suggesting that anyone who's got indefinite leave to remain has got, in some way, hasn't got a right to be here. They're basically moving the goalposts, and that is against everybody's, sense of fair play in this country. People know that people who've been here for a long time have been contributing should be able to be able to feel confident and certain in their investment in the community. One of the greatest risks about creating this temporary situation, or them not being able to be sure about their ability to stay for very long, is that it drives people away from investing, from developing in work and so forth, and therefore they become less helpful and contributive to society, less committed to the community, less likely to integrate.
But Polly, your government also appreciates there is an issue with ILR, which is why it's been extended from 5 to 10 years. So you must see that there is a concern here about that if you're going to have indefinite leave to remain, you've got to be making a positive contribution to British society and be integrated. Otherwise, why would you have made that change?
Well, those changes are out to consultation in order for us to be able to understand exactly what the economic impact would be of that, and to see what the integration risks around that are. Now, I understand the point about the Boris wave, but overall, we should be making sure that there are clear paths for people to be able to contribute to this country, and for them to be able to see value in settling down and making those networks stronger, because that makes our country better than if people are transient just here for a short time and going back. I know how important it is and the difference it makes when somebody has their passport taken away and is left in temporary accommodation. The likelihood of them being able to settle and contribute in the long term is much less than if we give people a valuable path to settlement, and that's what needs to be part of these reforms of the migration system everything we've got in place.
Okay, thank you very much. We're going to move on to a question on the Gordon and Denton by-election, which is happening on Thursday after the news on LBC with Matt Hewitt.
Lord Peter Mandelson has been arrested on suspicion of misconduct in public office. The former ambassador to the US had been under investigation over claims he shared sensitive information with Jeffrey Epstein, which he denies. The Education Secretary insists children with the most complex needs will keep the highest level of support in English schools. Fewer are expected to qualify under reforms designed to ensure more pupils can be taught in mainstream settings. And Tourette's campaigner John Davidson says he is deeply mortified if anyone considers his involuntary tics to be intentional or to carry any meaning. He shouted a racial slur while actors Delroy Lindo and Michael B. Jordan were on stage at last night's BAFTA Film Awards. LBC weather. Rain pushing across the north and east tonight will become confined to the Northern Isles by dawn. Patchy drizzle following behind, a low of 2 degrees.
Weekdays from 7 a.m.
This is taxation without representation.
Straight to the point.
You get giddy with all these U-turns.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC.
Lucky he gets up in the morning, really, isn't it?
Listen on our free Global Player app or the LBC app. Download it now from your app store. LBC.
You're really building that business, Josh. That's because you chose to bank with Virgin Money, earning cash back on your supplies, turning expenses into rewards on everything from Sanders to skip hire. The game is solved. You conquered. Open Virgin Money's M account for business now. UK excludes NI, Channel Islands and Isle of Man. 18 plus. Terms and exclusions apply. Cashback rate of 0.25% backed by the current account switch service. Virgin Money is a trading name. Applies no bank PLC.
Nothing beats that just booked feeling. Because when you book a Jet2 holiday, you start dreaming of pool days and seeing the sights. Get ahead for summer. Book now with just a £60 deposit per person. Choose from our best rooms and hotels and save £200 per couple. Nothing beats a Jet2 holiday. Package holidays you can trust. Options are protected. Subject to availability and conditions.
It's not easy being a clown, stuck on the wheel of the one person on the street who didn't tax their car. Yeah, Graham at number 7, I'm talking about you. Bet the neighbourhood group chat is as well. Wish I had a group chat. Maybe I can chat to myself. Hi, Clampy, how's it going? Not great, Clampy. Being clamped to the only untaxed car for miles is so lonely. Over 98% of drivers tax their vehicle on time. Tax it, don't risk it. Visit gov.uk/DVLA/tax it.
Whether you still own it or not, if you had a diesel car built between 2009 and 2020, you could be entitled to compensation. Checking takes minutes at jointheclaim.com, and if successful, compensation could be worth thousands. Diesel emissions claims are still open for Ford, Nissan, Renault, Mercedes, BMW and Jaguar Land Rover. Don't miss out. Join millions of drivers across the UK. Check your vehicle now at jointheclaim.com.
Cross Question with Ian Dale on LBC. Call 0345 6060973.
8:34 on LBC. Just rejoice at the news that Mims Davis is sitting next to me. She has arrived. Mims is Conservative Shadow World Secretary and MP for East Grinstead and Upfield. Polly Billington is to my right, Labour MP for East Thanet. And Sebastian Payne, leader, writer and columnist for The Times, and the Reverend Steve Chalk, founder of Oasis Community Learning. Martin in Doncaster has a very timely question, don't you, Martin?
Yeah. Hello, Ian. Hello. Yeah, the question is this. If Labour lose the Gorton and Denton by-election on Thursday, will Keir Starmer have no one to step down?
Well, bookmakers have Labour a distant third for the by-election on Thursday, with the Green Party now the odds-on favourites ahead of Reform UK. Now, you have your finger on the pulse of these issues. Seb, have you been up there?
I haven't been up there, but I'm hoping I might try and get up on Thursday. So don't worry, I will try and get some sense
by
on
the way, can you not mention any candidates' names? Because I then have to read out the whole 15.
Can you say the party's names?
You can say the party's names, but you get banned from future programmes if you mention the candidate.
So, thank you for that reminder. You don't have to mention.
I did say that the other night, and they still went on and did what I said.
back in his pocket telling him.
Exactly. I think the most interesting thing is the fact that Keir Starmer popped up in Gorton and Denton today, because normally Prime Ministers stay away from by-elections, because if they lose them, then they look rather silly having gone and campaigned there, and if they win them, say, oh, there's no thanks to you and your unpopularity in Westminster. But the fact that Keir Starmer went there reflects a conversation I had with a friend of mine who is a councillor up in the northwest, and he said, I think Labour are going to pip this, and that's why Keir Starmer's gone there. So despite the bookmakers who are normally more on the money on this, I can see where Labour gets this, Reform comes second, and then the Green Party's come third. I think the Green Party have been very good at getting a lot of noise. Zaporizki has again been very big on social media, but I'm not sure how much that translates into good campaigning from what I've heard from the ground up there. If Reform don't get this, there's going to be some big questions, I think, for Mr Farage over his choice of candidate. We're not going to say the name, but the candidate they've chosen there, and some of his past comments. But to your caller's question, if this wasn't to go Labour's way, I don't think Keir Starmer is going to resign, but it will add to the kind of the list sheet of all the problems facing the Prime Minister, and it would really push things to a head in May. But if Labour do win this, it's a tiny bit of breathing room, which I think Number 10 will be quite happy about.
Well, there's a new poll out today. I mean, by-elections are very difficult to do polls in, apparently. Don't know why, but it shows...
Small numbers of people, lots of uncertainty.
Greens on 35%, Reform on 29%, and Labour 25 or 26, I think. Mims, your party's on 5%. Just thought you'd like to know.
I don't think it was in our top 10 winnables to start with. And if
a lack of ambition.
Yeah, well, you know, if the so-called bunny huggers are doing so well in Gorton and Denton, well, very good news. I mean, I don't understand the Green Party's name right now, because it doesn't at all reflect their policies and what they're doing. They seem to be a kind of soft route for some people, and it doesn't seem to reflect what their manifesto is. So I do hope if people are voting for them, they do have some idea what's in their manifesto and in their thinking when it comes to, you know, heroin and all sorts of weird and wonderful things, and they are courting, frankly, any vote that will go. I don't think you should be totally surprised, Martin, that the Prime Minister is going to try and be helpful, because I'm not sure he's particularly helpful in Westminster right now, so it might be a safe space. I was just in the voting lobby, the Chancellor was there this evening, but in essence it is a Labour stronghold. And to your point, Ian, how much do people tell pollsters the actual truth? How do we know? Because could it be that actually this is deliberate? If they know it's a by-election, would people feel like they might want to say that they're Reform? They might be very shy Tories from our numbers, extremely shy.
So shy, almost don't exist.
But we do have a wonderful candidate there, but I'm not allowed to mention any of those people, are we?
Okay, mention their name.
I stopped short.
40 Tower sketch. I did, but I think I got away with it. Steve.
I think got away with it.
I think that for Labour at the moment, it's tough, isn't it? Because we're at the start, I think, and I'm speaking as an educationist again and referring back to our discussion earlier, we're at the start of some really big shifts in terms of opportunity and hope. But they take a long time to come about. Like I said earlier, every story has a start and a muddle in the middle.
So we're in the muddle, are we? Well and truly in the muddle, are we, Polly?
No, my point about the muddle is when things are not clear and when the headlines don't all ring right. But I get this sense that we're moving in a better direction than we were.
Pass the smelling salts to Martin, dearie me.
Yeah.
Steve.
Sorry. Oh, Martin's on the phone. Sorry, Steve.
I need the smelling salts too.
Yeah, and me. I need some
You may need this.
Sorry, on what planet are we doing better than last time it was in trouble?
I think that there are some... I think that what Labour have done is they mismanaged the messages. Do you know, I often think to myself, I wish I could be in Number 10 and just talk to them a little bit about how you get some of these good stories out there. But I think there are many good stories for ordinary people beginning to emerge, like the education story today, for instance, like the scrapping of the cap for child benefit, etc., etc. But I don't think those stories are quite penetrating as far as they should be quite yet.
Okay.
So I'd stick with what we've got, rather than trying to
stick
throw
with
it out
nerves
the
for
window.
fear of worse. Holly.
Ollie's face. I've been up in Gorton Denton. I've been knocking on doors and I've been talking to people about what they're worried about. I don't think anyone should be under any illusion that it's a tough fight for us, and that's understandable, bearing in mind the kind of experience we've had over the last few months.
Was the majority of the general election?
I can't remember.
13,000.
A lot.
13,000.
A lot, yeah. And a lot has changed since July 24. Now, some of that stuff, I will acknowledge, has been self-inflicted, but a lot of this has been external issues that we've had to deal with, and Kieran has to deal with, in particular, the global insecurity and so forth, which has made everybody very, very anxious. But with interest rates coming down and with more money being invested in things that people care about, like, for example, childcare and breakfast clubs, as well as other help to tackle the cost of living, I think we are with a very good chance of being able to hold on to that seat. Now, I want to make sure, as a backbencher who likes to ensure that I am being a constructive engager with the leadership, is that if it is really close, that we learn the lessons of that closeness and recognise that some of this is about hanging tough when things are really difficult, and also when and how we might need to adjust and course correct in order to be able to make sure that we are delivering for the British people. Far too much of the conversation, I have to say, in the national, both in the media and, I'm afraid, amongst politicians, is just about winning the next election. It's actually about governing properly and governing this country well, and that's what I think we need to be focused on.
But wasn't the question about if Labour lose this by-election, should Starmer go?
Thank you for stepping into my shoes, Steve.
I would say no.
And so would I, because what we need is some stability in this country. That's what we need. So what do you do if Keir Starmer goes? Who comes in next and how long will they last, etc., etc.?
The crucial thing here is he's not going to go, because we're only, 2 months away from local elections, and very important elections in Scotland and Wales as well. So I don't think there's any way that he would go.
I agree with that, and I think if you were one of the putative successors, whether it be your Wes Streeting or your Angela Rayner or your Ed Miliband, you're going to wait and allow Keir Starmer to take the loss, if there was a loss in Gorton Denton, and take the loss in May. So it feels like if there is going to be a crunch point about his leadership, it would be this summer. But one of the things I'd be interested to know, Polly, having been there from the ground on Gorton Denton, all the stuff that we've been reporting in the Times, is it's almost two seats in a way, two very different communities, side by side, and there is a world that if politics is being pulled apart from the middle, where you've got Labour on the centre right and the Conservatives on the centre right, the Labour on the centre left, you've got Reform targeting essentially the white working class community, and you've got the Greens targeting the ethnic minority community, because there's some very diverse areas of Gorton and Denton. If they can kind of pull at those different edges, then anything could happen in that by-election. If that happens, where does that leave Labour? It's kind of nowhere.
Well, again, I'd much rather be talking about governing the country, but if we must talk about electoral fortunes and psephology, I think the reality is that Labour wins when it's got a strong coalition that pulls people towards it rather than allows people to be divided. That's one of the reasons why our candidate, who I will not name, is talking about unity over division, and that's really important, not just because it's our values, but it is also an electoral necessity. Remember what we have in common with each other rather than that which divides us, and regardless of the colour of your skin, and regardless necessarily of how much education you've got, the people in Gorton and Denton need somebody who's going to be tackling the cost of living, reducing interest rates, tackling inflation, making sure that the schools they go to are good quality schools that their kids can flourish in. Those are the messages which, if we focus on those, we stop having the opportunity for people to be being picked off but for one reason or another, and we're able to draw those people together. The reality is both the Greens are only successful in one part of the constituency, Reform are only successful in another, Labour is actually got big support across the constituency, and I'm hoping that's what will secure us victory on Thursday.
There is something here, Ian, if I may, come May, which a lot of people are missing. If I put my shadow Secretary of State for Wales hat on, we could see the march of separatism, of nationalism, under the everybody's noses, without people barely noticing about what may happen with Plaid, what may happen with the SNP, and what may happen to us as GB in the UK. So I think there's a lot of eyes on this by-election, rightly so for Martin and what this means for Keir Starmer. But the devolution settlement and how we look as a country post-May will be much more than just local elections. And I think we, in this insecure and more dangerous and difficult geopolitical world, should be really thinking about if we allow this kind of multi-party politics again to divide us to the way that Polly has described, we could all wake up in the early part of May with quite a big surprise.
I hate to agree with Mim, but I think I do on this one. We don't want, under the progressive guise, that we've got a real threat to the unity of this country.
Absolutely.
Well, I've said before, and I'll say it again, I think Wales is going to be the story of the May elections.
Definitely.
Well,
and it'll all be your fault.
Actually, what's really important actually is the changed way that you vote in Wales. Every single Conservative or any vote counts with the 6-member wards, etc. And it will mean that those people who do want to keep the country together and actually don't want a border, and don't forget both the Greens and Reform have said they're quite happy for Wales to go their own way. They've said the same in Scotland. I think for us as a Conservative and Unionist Party, absolute USP here, and indeed for Labour and others, is to remind people there is a lot at stake in these elections, and I really don't want people to wake up thinking they voted Green for the bunny huggers, but actually they're very happy to separate us out alongside Plaid.
Okay, right, we will move on in just a moment. And of course, our much awaited fun question at the end of the programme. That should keep you all listening. 8:47.
LBC.
It's time to scale up that fishmonger business, Anne. With free day-to-day online banking from Virgin Money, you'll be a big fish in no time. Now that's a real catch of the day. Open Virgin Money's M account for business now. UK excludes NI, Channel Islands and Isle of Man. 18 plus fees apply for chaps. International payments, terms and exclusions apply. Backed by the current account switch service. Virgin Money is a trading name. Applies no bank PLC.
I'm Natasha, and this is my NHS story. I went to the GP because I'd found a lump in my breast, and the GP referred me to a CDC centre. It was just really welcoming from the moment I arrived. To just be reassured all in one day was fantastic.
The government is up.
Rada. Hey. Mnaendelea na safari yangu, imefreeze, imenionyesha Z. Si leo.
Lavins ametupwa. Bibi amezima wifi. Bibi yake pia amezima wifi. Sema leo ni usiku. Kupiga kelele, amesema na kuangalia sana. Maneno ya ngwati mchana, ni usiku leo la Lavins.
Ni mbaya. Watu wangu jo ni mbaya. Unajua nimeona imefreeze nikajiambia. Nimeona imefreeze nikajiambia wifi. kwani huku ni wapi? Kwani hizi mimi nimerudisha nyuma wapi huku? We naye imenirudisha nyuma, si ati nini? Hadi siwezi teleport kama niko na kazi sahi.
Huwezi quick travel kama uko na kazi.
Huwezi
uko na kazi ama una.
Niko na kazi, shida ni hata hiyo console yenyewe ifunguki. Sasa hata go to itafanya. Inabidi nirudi huku kwa config niangalie hii file.
Uliendesha ndege ilikuwa lini?
Hata
pilot ulikawia kuendesha ndege ikajitoa.
Kaona huyu atumiangi hiyo.
jamaa imewaka green na baada amesimama hapo mbele tu.
Maji hizi zote ni zako. Zote.
Hao wote ni wageni. Safari pia ni mzuri kusafiri wengi. Si wewe tu kwa barabara peke yako. Mama tu hapo.
Yamesimama. Ingine. Kuna NPC.
Wewe unataka kupigia honi sasa unaona amenyamaza mama tu.
Amekuja hivyo ndiye agonge mti, agonge NPC.
Well, at least hii console yangu inafanya sasa. Mmesema mko wapi likuje? Hadi kamera 0 sasa imeanza kufanya. Ndio inanienjoy hii kitu. Mko town gani? Gurumbi, wacha niende Gurumbi ndio ni Ngoje msiende mbali. Ndio kwa wao wanakuja mbali. Amnigojei na vile nilikuwa hapa. Wewe mmepita back mill. Teleport nikienda nyuma. Nimeteleport nikarudi nyuma. Don si yako hapa Gurumbi. Don unafanya nini huku Gurumbi? Uko kwa hewa unapepea. Unakuona Burundi wewe. Cycle go petrol station. Where's that gate? Go petrol station. Petrol station. Oh. Niaje sijaangukia mtu. Naangalia kama bado tuko live. Wow! Cheki venye anaingia. Why? Cheki. Why? Mimi nilikuwa najua nilikuwa nachokoza kisa yake. Mbaya na nyinyi sasa. Ai! Cheki ndio jamaa ameingia. Ndio diesel bwana ameingia. Sasa mzee unapeleka gari ya mali gari bana, kuna nafasi pinya gari huko kando, nafasi. Sasa uamini, najua inakuuma lakini ukadi. Van Diesel mnakuja. Fuck. Ya Van Diesel abala. Yako Van Diesel yendi speed ya 90. Van Diesel mnakuja Z. Ai wangu kanada. kiripea. Akamwambia mali fulani kufika tupate hanga barabara kametolewa aka kaalawa na vile zaina katumia. Baka niishi hapa mbele, baka niishi hapa. Acha ni slow tu. Niishi hapa. Mambo ya alawa ndio kushika barabara. Aya bana. Mbona hiyo AI sijaona imegonga baa mzigo venye mimi naona nigonga na mzigo. Ndio ndio kuuliza nikadi. AI. Yo, pita nayo. Walai nilikuwa nimeigojea yume. Karawa endi mzee. Ndio karawa anatoka wapi anataka kuingia wapi sasa? Hapo ni wapi? Ingia tuende mzee. Angalia hii AI. Yaani hii AI ilikuwa inakuja nipe nafasi hii. Ingia hapo mbele yangu zake. Kijana wangu niwe amekuingia. Nilikuwa nakojea dona waume, vile nimesikia twende. Kitu hapo, yanajua. tena tulichukua na jina ya nani? Mimi naona we. Kweli tukilipwa. Exactly. Sasa hii tena tulichukua na jina ya nani? Kwanza mimi niambia damage kwanza, nilijibu damage. Joba mzee. Ni nini sasa Don? Nani hiyo? wakulima bro. Ndio maana Van Diesel azieji. Ndio maana Van Diesel anapiganao. Nimechaji, yani ushachaji kwa sababu siko umechaji. Yeye inaamua sasa. Ai uongo Don uongo. Ai uongo. Usikia ananipita mlima ikiisha saa kei. Aje ananipita mlima ikiisha mzee. Hapa ni speed ya 50, yeye ina slow inaenda speed ya 30. Sasa mimi nafanya AI ya speed ya 30. Mahali pa speed ya 50. Hapo nilikuwa nimeamua AI yenye ingeingiza mkia hapo. Kwa nimepiga hodi hiyo na mkia nao. Ingeingiza mkia. Piga hiyo nione nijifanyije sasa. Lakini barabara ni mbaya. Ni kama mmerealize. now. Watu wamesema huku mwisho ndio watu hawalipi. Haya. Sasa hii zinakaa tu ikikua. Jana wamekuja ikikua 17. Wamekana wamefika hapo wamekana kufungua. Unafanya nini sasa wewe? Ndio ni nini sasa? Mbona unakuza yeye itufungie njia? Wallahi umeikuza ikaleta matako kuuzi, imebidi nikanyage grill. Hapo tukipiga gari bana, ingeni hapo tukipiga gari. Wameshapi. Unajua muamini venye naingia tu nikitoka. Na jamani nimepita. Yaani nyinyi mnaniangalia tu nikiingia jua. Alikuwa peke yangu bana, mimi naingia jua. Yenye iko na 888, mwambie yenye iko na 888. Angalia yenye iko na 888. Tunavuka bahari. Jua. Imeandikwa Iran. Nini? Nataka nione lakini lazima nione. Hadi ameingia wapi? Niulize. Nimempata amepiga L hapo, amepiga L nyuma ya basi. L. Unajua right. Kwani zimesikia? Imesikia right. Wewe karau tulia, wewe karau tulia. Karau anaona niingia na bado anataka kuingia gari. Basi unaovinya gari, shoga. Basi unaovinya gari. hapa nishisimama. Hapa akajia na kajua nishisimama hapa. Hapa naona Sake namuona. Don namuona. Nilikwambia utapokonywa gari, ona umepokonywa gari. Juu ya kwenda kulimisha trailer. Van Diesel. Unapewa gari unaenda kulimisha. Unapewa gari unaenda unalimisha, unaingiza kwa shamba. You know how much a trailer is worth? Around 8 million. Yeah? Kali yake. Kijana ameiba funguo. Sake hapa Ghetto. Van Diesel, nega kwa barabara hapa. Sake ndio uongoza safari. Amelegea ameachilia mnyama Hey, nilikwambia nini? Ndio huyu amepewa gari ingine. Ango yake wanajaribu kupigana naye sana.
Namuona kulima.
Bana cheki down mwenye ananipita. Cheki down mwenye ananipita ni gani? Aleki vinya gari Aleki. Nyama mimi songeye. Ai ukidanganya mwingine na pia. Aleki. Aleki ile imembeba kwa. Aleki anapita mazao mabaya. Wacha niwache na gari. Karani ni mikono nataka ni mimi sitoi pesa kwa jicho. Ananijajwa angejua vile hapa yeye zinataka zija labda ananijajwa. Wala la control drive jana na kwanza ashughulikie traffic. Ashughulikie traffic. Unajua nataka kupita labda shangarani. Nimecheki. Kamera tu. Ndio overtake na kamera hii. Imekauka. Sake watu tunaona imekauka. Baya, wai. Kamelapwa. Kamelapwa. Sake ya baadhi. Mimi nilikuwa nasimama hapa ninaokoa. Pita leki. Niko mwisho siwezi kuendelea hapo. Leki hapo mimi niko mwisho pale. Mwisho leo. Na barabara ni kubwa. We, aleki na guruma vizuri mzee. Hai. Sakei kichwa imeingia ndani ya trakta. mashetani hapa nyuma. Wala nimesikia kipiga. Wewe kujeli mkifika hapa wala simameni msikize hizo masauti. Wala mtasikia masauti za mashetani. Mashetani hapa zinapiga kelele. Mashetani hapa zinapiga kelele mbaya. Umerusha ulebe huko. Nimesikia mashetani hapa nyuma. Wow. Kwanza zinawiga saki. Zinawiga mbaya. Unajua nimeiona hapa ikipita imevaa white. Hapa kwa barabara nimeona ikipita imevaa white. Nikadhani nikamwacha ni slow. Ni slow sana nasikia sauti nasikia Ai, alafu ni usiku. Wewe ndio ni threat kwa dereva wewe. Hiyo safari waje tuendelee kesho. Hiyo ni threat kwa dereva. Wewe unaisikia? Unaisikia kipiga kelele? Acha tusavie hapo, tuendelee hapo kesho mzee. Zimebaki data. Sasa hii ni mjana wangu na muone. Alafu mnanyambia niendelee na safari. Mimi la safari gani zake? Alafu mlionaka kasanduku ameweka hapa. Walai nikauchawi walai. Walai, kwa haka mjana kanaonekana kinga. Hebu ingieni kwa live muone. Walai kasanduku kake kuuchawi. Walai ni tutaendelea kesho watu wangu. Unasemaje?